Hey everyone, another week, back to projects. Weather's starting to clear here. We're going to have a nice warm week this week. The snow will start to melt and I'll be back to doing projects. And as a typical year, I've got more projects than I've got either time or money to complete. So let's think about some of the projects that I'd like to get to this year, and we'll see if we can get any of them done. I've got the solar tracker to put up. That's going to be mounted on a platform. So rather than being mounted on the ground, it's going to be mounted to a platform with a separate cluster of probably 4x4s to help hold that, so it's not just a board underneath it that's trying to hold it against the wind and everything else. It's going to actually have a column beneath it running down into the ground to help hold that in place and to adjust itself to wind and to protect it. I have a 30-foot mast to put up that will take my ham radio gear and get the antennas put up at a greater height, so that I'll have better reception for this year and for the coming winter. I have the bird feeders. I still want to put a shelter over the bird feeders to keep some of the snow off and the rain off so that they don't get filled. If you're familiar with the stuff that I've shared before, the bird feeders are a bird feeder kind of bird bath combo. They're 3D printed. Water will go through 3D prints because there's just a little bit of a gap, so they have to be sealed a bit. But without that, filling with seed is great. They're perfect for the birds. I've actually seen the birds tuck in cold weather in there, and it kind of protects them on both sides because it's got a curve on both sides, but it's open front to back. But it's great for collecting water. And so something has to be over the top of it to shunt that water away. Even if it's just an 8-foot sheet of metal roofing, for example, over the top, just so that the water has something to hit and shunts away from the feeders. The feeders obviously are not taking up a great deal of space, but of course, when it comes to blowing snow and blowing rain, the height of the roof above the feeders is what's going to be the determining factor there. It's got to be high enough to let the birds go through and get out comfortably, but at the same time, it needs to be low enough so that it's got less blowing capability. So I've got that on the schedule. A similar vein, I want to redo the car shelter. So over the course of the winter, the car shelter had a catastrophic failure. It's 5 cells, if you will, on each side. So it's got a pitched roof. And there's 5 open areas on each side between the beams of the metal posts that go up to that pitch in the center. And that's a pretty good gap between those. It's approximately 4 feet between each one of those. And it's about 6 feet from the peak to the edge, which is great, but the problem with that's going to be that it's too much of a gap. So when there's snow, the strain is on the material and not on anything else. So when I was trying to get the snow off, because it's a good idea to clean them off, what I noticed was the roller that I was using actually caused it to tear a little bit. Now, this is a couple of years old, so it's not like it's a new thing. It's been exposed to the sun for a couple of years, so you knew it was going to fail at a certain point. But the downside to the shelter structure that Shelter Logic put out is it's wrapped around the posts, literally. So the shelter itself is a one-piece, like a one-piece pajama set. It goes over the top. It's got pieces that slide down on the poles to hold them in place down at the bottom, which keeps the tension, right? It needs to have tension. That's great. But replacing it is a bear. So while it's got these pull strings on both sides to take off, the piece that's supposed to be closing it in on both ends, not so much. That you actually have to take the entire end apart to get it put on and taken off, which is ridiculous. The other piece, okay, it stretches over the top, but again, it goes around the bars at the bottom. It doesn't have a wrap system to it. The bar literally slides through it. So in order to change that out, you have to take the entire unit apart, at least as far as these bars are concerned. Take that bar out, slide the bar through, and then reattach the bar. It's a painful process. You do have the top bars and it doesn't have anything in place, so it's not going to fall apart, but the bottom bars have to be all taken off, the shelter put around it, and then put together again and pulled on both sides. So it's relatively easy, except there's a lot to it. All right, so the concept is fairly simple. You've got these pieces at the bottom that these have to slide through, and it has to just get tossed over the entire top, pulled on the ends, and then you have to take all the bars out and slide the bars through the bottom piece there, and then reattach the bars. Okay. The material that they sell for the top is typically about half the price of a brand new unit. Not great. I replaced it with a tarp for now. I'll figure out what I'm going to do later. 24 by 24 foot tarp. But again, as I was going through, I've got these gaps, right? It's a 4 by 6 foot hole between the pipes because it's metal piping that the whole thing is put together with. So what I did instead was I took 1 by 2 for now and slid it through. And that's how I know this is about 4 feet, because an 8 foot 1 by 2 goes across a pair of holes very easily. And that gives me a little bit of strength underneath. Now, that's not where I'm going to end up. I'm going to end up putting a wooden frame of 2 by 2 on top of the structure. Now, of course, once I do that, there's no way I could put the normal material over the top again, because this is going to push it up too high. However, by putting that 2 by 2 structure in there, I can then either put tarp over the top, which will probably be as far as it gets to this year. But with the latticework framework I'm going to put underneath it, it's going to keep the tarp up so that I don't have dips. I don't have the snow putting pressure on the tarp material itself. It's going to be the tarp material against this piece that I've got beneath it. But I want to eventually get to, rather than a metal roof, I want to use a clear plastic roof. Now, they don't have quite the same life expectancy, supposedly. I don't care if it clears up, if it starts to fog up or something because of the UV exposure. All I wanted to do is keep the snow off the car, but at the same time, it'd be really nice to have all that light coming in, right? These car shelters are great, but they're dark. If you actually seal both front and back ends, they're really dark inside. And it's not like you want to put any lights inside something like that. You've got a metal structure to begin with, and it's outdoors. So you'd have to have weatherproof lighting that's more battery powered than anything else. It's kind of crazy. So what I want to do here is, by putting the framework between each of the pieces. So there'll be one frame that goes over, let's call them cell 1 and 2, and another frame that's going to go over cells 4 and 5. But cell 3 is going to have its own piece that's just going to handle it. Right? I got 5 cells. I've got to figure out where I'm going to put that. So that's going to be in the center. That'll be connected to 1 and 2 and 4 and 5. So they'll all be attached, put in place, and then to that I can attach the roofing. But again, Another project. A lot of the stuff is, I, like you guys, don't have a ton of money to do this stuff, nor do I unfortunately have a ton of time to get these things done. I have a normal job that takes up 40 plus hours a week some weeks, and it just doesn't give me enough time to go do some other projects that I would like to. A couple of years ago, things were a little different. My schedule was a little bit different. I had some open space in the morning, so I could get out really early in the morning and do some stuff before I had to start work. Now that's kind of gone away. But those are the main projects. I still like to put my garden back up again. There's other things that I'd like to get to, like redoing the porch. And I have a cell-based idea, a modular idea for how I can put things underneath the house. So the part of the house is a crawl space underneath. Crawl spaces are a horrendous come cold weather, because just like a bridge, the cold air can go underneath no matter how good it is underneath there. Cold air is going to go underneath, and it makes your floors cold. And of course, the floors being cold makes your house feel cooler because you've got cold radiating up from the floors. So I'm looking at a modular technique of making basically a box without a top and a bottom out of foam insulating material, like the stuff they use outdoors on the outside of a house. By putting that together in a box shape, I've created a air gap between the front and the back. So even if the outside panel gets cold and the cold seeps into it, it's got an air gap before it gets in the next panel. That should allow for the underside of the house to stay warmer. It's just the foam material, so if it gets damaged because I've got an animal under the house or whatever, it's easy to replace, which is why I want to make it modular. And I can just make these like bricks, hollow bricks, if you will, that I can put in place all the way around the crawl space part of the house to seal that up a little better so that I have less cold coming in the winter. Again, some of the stuff is be nice to have in place before winter, but I don't know if I'm going to get to it or not. The solar panel would be good to have before the summer. The ham tower can go up just about any time. But when it comes to the car shelter and putting around underneath the house, and even for the birds, I'd love to have all that in place beforehand. Don't know that I'm going to get there. The other thing is the deck that I created to hold the 6 solar panels that I currently have is in an L shape of the house. So that means that there's a house behind that deck and a house to the east of that deck. So if I were to, and I'm going to extend the deck out, and that's going to become part of the platform for the movable solar array. Once I get that in place, I could seal that off a little bit more, put a door or something in place there that just a tarp for the winter that would allow me to seal that area off so that the birds would have a spot to get underneath the porch and nest in there or stay warm in there if the weather is bad outside. I would like to have the old style Christmas lights. If anybody remembers those, they were the bulbs would heat up, and if you had them in a tree, birds would sometimes nest against them to help stay warm. And we've had some brutally cold temperatures this winter. I would really, really, really like to have something that would allow my little feathered friends to tuck in and get out of the storm. And as I said, it's an L shape. So there's some bushes in the front. They could swing from the bushes, keep down low so that they're within line of the house, which protect them from any wind from the east and from the north, and fly north into an area that I'd like to set up in there with some of these old bird feeders and things like that I swap out, and it would give them some place to tuck in and stay kind of warm and out of the wind. And I'd like to get that project done too. But again, a lot more projects than there are hands, just having two, and cash. But we will see what we can get to this year, and I'll take you guys along the journey as I get each one done. But so far this year, I've got the 24 by 24 foot tarp over the car shelter. It held up fine for the last couple of storms that we've had. I have not been able to tie down the sides on either side or to give it the proper tension across the top yet. But the 1x2s are keeping it from bowing in. So that's been my saving grace, is having those slats put in place to help keep the tarp up where it needs to be. And that was just a happy coincidence. I got those 1x2s a couple of years ago because I had a project I was going to use them for. I put that project aside for right now because it needed to use them for here. And we'll get back to the other project, which is basically a railing type project that I've got to get done. But that's where we are right now. I would love to have the solar panels up, seeing as everything's just sitting here collecting dust instead of creating energy for me and saving me money. I've got to get the antenna up. The antenna is currently at about 16-20 feet up in the air at this point. I'd like to add another 10 feet to it, and I'd like to get it further away from the house because it's using the house as its centerpiece. It's piece to hold the pole that it's on in place for right now. So let's get all that stuff rearranged. So hopefully that's what get a couple of projects done this year, I hope, and we'll see how it goes from there. But I'll have you guys along the entire journey, and thank you guys for listening. And I will talk to you all next week.